Hello, and welcome back to the Automation Capitals project. So, the main thing I'll be doing in today's episode will be expanding Old Basara next to the fortress, but there's also a few other small tasks I'll be getting to today, like finishing up the high school. But first, I'll show a bit of progress that I've done since last time. Now, as you'll notice, I do have this nice Lebanese National Museum asset that I've plopped down next to the high school. It works as a library. I've renamed it the Basara History Museum, and definitely helps to tie together this old Basara area, I find. I've also expanded out in this direction a little bit, added another mosque, some offices, which is because I have, as you can see, I've kind of lacking in workplaces around right now. So I've expanded Old Basara in this area a little bit, and a little bit elsewhere. Also notice I got rid of this historic part of the name. It's just renamed Old Basara because the section I'll be expanding by the fortress will be called Historic Old Basara. And with that, I'll need to split up Old Basara into several distinct neighborhoods and give each of them their own name, but I'm not going to worry about that quite yet. That said, I did find some good sports field assets to put behind the high school, so that's what I'll be getting on first today, so might as well get to that right now. So with this being an urban high school, I figured a smaller field would make a little more sense since they would be tighter on space. So that's why I have this instead of a, let's say, regulation size soccer field. And for this part here, I figured that it would make sense for the school to have some kind of, outdoor, non-sport area, and being in the desert, it makes sense to have some roof covering just to avoid the harshest part of the sun. So that's what that is that I'm building there. And throwing some tables underneath so people can, decide to eat their lunch outside on a day that's not too hot, or play card games or whatever else they might be doing as, teenagers during their lunch break. And that should about do it for the high school. It's got a nice sports field, got the outdoor dining area here. It's got, I've added some trees and some bushes, so there's still a little bit of greenery back there. It's not just cement. And this field also, as far as use in the city, works as a public park pretty well. And as for the roof area, it's actually these parking lot structures, which I've put in before, but didn't showcase it. But yeah, it's one of those things that really helps to tie in the whole look of the Middle Eastern aesthetic that you have for Basara by having these sunshades over parking areas. So now with the high school done, there's something else I want to get done just before heading to historical Old Basara. Just one of those things when you see such a bare wall in a commercial area, it makes sense to have some kind of billboard or something just to keep it from looking so bare and just really help tie in the commercial density for the area. And now for Historical Old Basara. There's already the Grand Mosque here and the fortress, and I have started the village a little bit on the side. So what I'll be doing is expanding outward, and pretty much having this be the more or less the oldest part of the city and be very, touristy kind of thing, and kept as authentic as possible as far as an old town area goes. With this little filler area done, it's time to try something a little special here. Now, wouldn't make sense to have a Middle Eastern style city without having one of those really interesting kind of like terraced looks with like walls, which I've done a little bit of it in the previous parts of Old Basara before, mostly along the water. But here, I figured there's this road that it needs to go through somewhere, and I'd rather not having cut through the historical Old Basara. So why not go under it? And in this case, if I have the city if I have a kind of terraced area, I can easily have the road going underneath that terraced area, cutting through to wherever it's going to be going, and at the same time really have something interesting just to keep this whole area from looking too flat, as I found it currently does, because the terrain is quite flat over here compared to closer to the water. So this, a lot of fiddling around with the walls here, but I think it'll come out really nicely in the end to have this raised area with the walls and just buildings all around, and the street obviously cutting underneath. As you can see, I'm really aiming to have a decent amount of density, or historical density to be more specific, because they're not that tall of buildings here. But yeah, that's what I was aiming to have, going over the street that's kind of tunneling underneath, and just have it look like it's nice and terraced, and traffic is just diverted under the old city here. And this would effectively be kind of the center of Old Basara. So I'm even thinking of potentially adding some kind of more historical palace or something. I'm not sure, but definitely something to add to it, where the king of Basara would have lived out in the past, assuming the place would not have gone demolished. I'm not sure how to proceed with that, considering that this place would have gone through a couple wars, with the invasion of Arcana initially, and then obviously the fight for freedom from them during the Great War. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure on that yet. I do plan to have a nice palatial residence somewhere in this oasis near the water, to be used currently, but whether or not I'll have a more historical residence that's maybe used as a museum or something, I'm not sure on that yet. But yeah, definitely a lot of work for this area. It's just can't do any zoning to have this kind of density and just things really crammed in like that, just for that authentic historical look that I'm going for. Now over here, here's a nice look at what sunset on a foggy evening may look like in Basara. There's a lot of red, and I just think it looks so beautiful like this, and just really feel the heat of the desert in a sense with this lighting. Gotta love those views across the water as well. As you can see, I'm adding another mosque to this area, even with the Grand Mosque nearby. It would make sense to have some different ones, and I find such buildings really help to tie in historical areas together, because that's pretty much the tallest thing you can have, and it adds a certain focal point to the skyline of an otherwise lower rise district. Can't forget about nighttime illumination as well. It's one of those things that can be easy to miss when using roads in a way that they don't have built-on lights. So it's nice to always go back, just review at night to make sure an area isn't too dark, because this is meant to be a little more touristy area, not so much a shady area of the city. Yeah, I think that should about do it for today. It's definitely quite a long episode, and I've put in a lot of progress in expanding Historic Old Basara with the tunnel underneath, the raised area with the walls above, and just getting that nice layered look that I was going for. I think it's come out really nicely, and if anybody's got any comments on that, definitely make sure to let me know. And yeah, as expected, I'll be expanding eventually a little more towards the south, or yeah, that is the south. I'll be expanding that way, and eventually having the road going off in that distance where there's going to be a palace or something eventually, and just more of Old Basara. With that, as usual, if you have any comments or suggestions, make sure to leave a comment below or in the automation forums thread about this project that's linked just below this video. And to do a little something different today, I'm going to end it off with some nice cinematics of the city. So with that, goodbye, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.